Before you head into the show ring, something that is super important is understanding how to walk a course and how to count strides. I mean, it is so important to know a plan going in before you do a show jumping course. And depending on what kind of ride you have, if you have a young horse that's never done it before, or you have an old schoolmaster who knows what to do, it makes a totally different horse show experience as far as your course is concerned. So today I'm going to teach you how to walk a course and how to count strides for a straight line, a bending line, a rollback, and around the ring. So let's get started. So the first part is probably the most important, and that is to take an account of takeoff and landing for your horse. Typically, that will be about 12 feet distance, which is also the same amount as one full stride. So what I usually do is I walk out 4 steps, because 4 steps of 3-foot steps is equal to 12 feet. So 4 times 3 is 12. So I'll usually walk out 4 steps first and say that that is my takeoff and landing, or my 0 stride. And then I will continue on. So let me show you what I mean. I'll count out loud for you. I start at the back, and I go 1, 2, 3, 0. So that was my 4th step. So this is already takeoff and landing. So I count that as my 0 stride. Now I'm going to continue on and find out how many strides this line is. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I got to the base of my fence with 6 fingers up. Another way you can do it is go 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, and count it that way. So 6 strides in this line, which also takes into account takeoff and landing, and it walked out pretty evenly. My toe ended up right at the base of the fence. Something to take into account during some show jumping courses is it's course designer's job to make sure that there are challenges, safe challenges within a course. So sometimes you'll approach a line that you just walked and you'll either be short a step or 2, or just over a step or 2 than what you thought. That is called putting a line on a half stride, and that is where you have to determine, based on your ability and your horse's ability, what to do in the situation. So let's say I approached this line that I just walked and walked it at a 5.5. So there are several things to consider. If my horse is really quick, if it has a really big stride, then I will probably plan on landing off the first fence and legging him forward so that that 5 fits nicely. If I have a really hard element after this, and I'm not really too concerned about the time allowed, I'm going to land off the first fence, balance up, and shorten my horse's stride to fit that 6 in. So that's just another reason that walking a course is so important, is because there'll sometimes be elements where you really do need to plan it out on foot so that you can put you and your horse in the best situation possible. So it would be nice if every element of the course is a straight line, but obviously that's not the case. We have rollbacks, we have bending lines, we have areas around the end of the ring that we need to take account for also. And all of those areas are also places you should be counting your strides too. Right now I'm going to show you how to do a bending line. So it's going to be this element bending in a light curve over to the next element. The tricky part with bending lines is that there's different ways you can attack this element. You can go for a center-to-center approach, which is the most standard. But if there is a certain situation where you are wanting to make a certain time allowed, or if it is a speed round where you are trying to get around as fast as possible, you might want to take the direct route. So you'll start at the base of the back of your first element. We're going to do our landing stride first. 1, 2, 3, landing. Okay, so that's our landing step. Now, as I'm counting the remainder of the strides, I am constantly taking an eye and making sure that this would be a center-to-center track. I don't want to start drifting in or staying out too long, so I always want to look and make sure that once I am square with my next fence, then I start turning in toward it. So here we go. So that means it was 5 strides and almost a 6th stride. So this element, if I walked it from center to center, was about a 5 3/4. So I either want to cut it in just slightly and make the 5 work, or stay out another extra step and make the 6 work. Another thing I could do is still ride it center to center, but I can do what I did on the straight line and either leg the horse forward after the first fence to make that 5 work, or land in whoa and collect the step to make the 6 work. Again, it all depends on what the entire course is looking like, what your horse's needs are, and what you're doing after the element. So the last thing I want to go over is rollbacks and ends of the ring, or long turns where you aren't jumping. These are still really important parts to even walk and take into account, kind of make a mental note of where you're going to be at in your course and your striding, so that you can make the most educated and safe decision. Let's say this element is in a jump off and you are watching everyone do it and they're doing it in a certain amount of strides, and you want to try to do one less stride. It would have been really helpful for you during the course walk to walk it and see exactly where it's at. One stride can be a half a second difference, and so it's really important as you're getting in the higher levels to make sure that every stride is accounted for. So, same thing, you're going to imagine what your horse's track would be through the element, and then take yourself through it, walking on foot, counting the strides to see where you'll be at, just as a kind of a gauge to see what would be the straight centered approach and track for you. So I'm going to, again, start at the back side of my fence, and in this course I'm going to be rolling back to this other fence to my right. So I'm going to first visualize what my horse would do after this line. So for instance, my horse, it works out in my favor, tends to land right after a jump. So I'm going to plan on heading over right away. I'm going to tuck really neatly around this turn to get to my other element. So I'm going to first walk the landing, and then I'll show you my track that I plan on making with my horse, and then kind of gauging what my striding would be. One, 2, 3. So I walked that out as like an 8 3/4, which is good. And now I know, I have in the back of my head, it'll probably be somewhere between 8 and 9 strides, depending on how proactive I am to get around that turn and back to this rollback. This is the exact same thing that you want to do with, let's say, 2 jumps that you have the end of the ring in between. It's really great to just walk that out to get an idea. Okay, I'm gonna have about 12 strides or so to my next fence if I stay straight and organized. And I just think it's a great way. It's not 100% necessary for a first round of a jumper course, but especially in a jump off, and especially when time is so tight, it's important to really know where you're at. So we covered straight lines, bending lines, rollbacks, and ends of the ring, the importance of walking that as part of your course, and how to count your strides along the way. So hopefully you found this helpful. Let's go ride and see what we find out.
She's a Mona Lisa. Everyone's lining up to see her. She's a Mona Lisa.